Good morning and welcome to Rising. Today is Thursday, I believe. Is that where we're at?
That's right, Robby, and we have a great show for you today.
All right, well, let's get right to it. Let the chips fall where they may. That's Speaker Mike Johnson's take as he's clinging to his gavel. Speaker Johnson is facing threats by fellow Republicans to oust him for what they say is folding to the will of Democrats. Marjorie Taylor Greene led the charge against Johnson last week when he said that he would put forth bills to fund Ukraine and Israel. Johnson will put forth 4 separate bills that would provide additional $95 billion in military funding. The military assistance would go to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, while a 4th imposes additional sanctions on Iran. Oh, and he did throw a bone to some Republicans, as well as some Democrats, frankly, by cramming in the ban on TikTok. Now, asked about the uphill battle he's up against from hardline conservatives in the House, this is what Johnson said to CNN's Jake Tapper.
I'm operating with the smallest margin in U.S. history. I have a 1-vote margin, Jake. So in order to get something into this underlying package, we have to have the votes on the floor to pass a rule. You know, that's how the process works here. The rule allows for the substantive bill to be put on the floor. I don't have all my Republicans who agree on that rule, and that means the only way to get a rule on the floor is that it requires a couple of Democrats.
Johnson was pressed on the timing of aid to Ukraine, particularly why it's taken so long. Here's his response.
We know what the timetable is. We know the urgency in Ukraine and in Israel. And we are going to stand by Israel, our close ally and dear friend, and we're going to stand for freedom and make sure that Vladimir Putin doesn't march through Europe. These are important responsibilities. A strong America is good for the entire world. Since World War II, really, the responsibility for the free world has been shifted onto our shoulders, and we accept that role.
Despite opposition from MAGA conservatives like Chip Roy, Bob Good, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, Johnson is pressing forward, teeing up a vote on the $95 billion package this weekend. President Biden already said he would sign it, but it has to go through the Senate first. Now, this represents a pretty significant break in the Republican Party. Previously, it's been MAGA Republicans, including former President Donald Trump, against the establishment. Now, Donald Trump has realigned himself alongside establishment figure Mike Johnson. How do voters interpret basically Donald Trump throwing under the bus some of these core issues? You know, this kind of more isolationist approach, not funding Ukraine, not funding Israel, not sending billions of dollars overseas, has been really core to the base energy excitement over the Donald Trump campaign and movement. What gives now?
Donald Trump needs to speak up and clarify that Mike Johnson is not actually speaking for him when Mike Johnson is asserting that he has Donald Trump's full support to move forward with FISA reauthorization, with all of the spending. Because you're right,
TikTok
that
ban?
Trump is the TikTok ban. Trump is allowing Mike Johnson, the speaker, to claim that these policies are supported by Trump, are where the Republicans need to be. And frankly, he's claiming, I mean, he's sort of trying to make himself to be some kind of hero or martyr, saying, I know a lot of my Republicans don't want to do this stuff, but I'm going to do it anyway. That's kind of the framing he's getting. I'm starting to see basically positive articles about him being written by the likes of CNN. Look at this brave Republican who's you know, an Adam Kinzinger or a Liz Cheney who's willing to say that funding Ukraine is so important, you might as well, it's worth throwing away your entire leadership and authority in the party. Look, I think a lot of conservative voters, conservative members of Congress have to be frustrated by the fact that they went through an entire They threw a justifiable tantrum to replace the speaker, Kevin McCarthy. What do we have to show for it? This speaker is doing all of the same things, and they've just lowered the threshold for their majority.
Wait, I'm confused. Is your argument that you don't think Donald Trump actually does support Mike Johnson, despite saying he supports Mike Johnson, recently, just earlier this week, saying, I think he's a very good person, despite himself trying to ban TikTok when he was in office, and despite when he was president offering the full support to, obviously the Ukraine war hadn't started yet, but to Israel, funding it, never making any cuts in that respect. I mean, what is actually substantively inconsistent about Mike Johnson's, in the establishment Republicans' approach right now, and Donald Trump's approach?
I mean, more recently than when he was president, in fact, in the last week, he has truthed kill FISA. He has said he doesn't support the TikTok ban. He has, repeatedly said that he doesn't.
Right, that's what he's truthed. But
Right.
what he said is that he supports Mike Johnson. So how do you parse
That's what
that?
I'm saying. He needs to clarify that.
But why do you think that he isn't intentionally his clarifying statement? The most recent statement is that he supports Mike Johnson, not that he doesn't like the TikTok ban or FISA, which he seems to have also confused the issue on that. He didn't like the fact that FISA came after Carter Page, his staffer, but it was a different provision of FISA that was actually
Mike
implicated
Johnson
in that.
saying that he has Trump's full support after meeting with him. So I would like to hear from Trump himself how he feels about this package of swamp creature type bills to fund wars everywhere, to escalate hostilities, to do everything that so many conservatives right now are against. And I'm not trying to defend Trump. Yes, if he's standing by Mike Johnson in this moment, I think that's going to hurt him with a lot of his voters who are skeptical of all these policies, and he's sometimes skeptical of them as well. So I'm saying he should speak up and he should clarify.
Newsweek reported yesterday after this package was announced, they reached out to Donald Trump for a comment. He said, we'll see what happens with that being the package, and then went on to say, I think Mike Johnson is a very good person. He did not take that opportunity to distance himself from it at all and has chosen not to do so. In fact, has been bear hugging Mike Johnson since their phone call over the weekend. So I think the question is, if you have to have some evidence that Donald Trump doesn't know exactly what he's doing and that he doesn't support this package, because at the end of the day, he might be prioritizing in a way that's perfectly rational from a political perspective, but is a betrayal of his base, that it's better to not have Republicans in disarray than to stand up for the principles that he said are core to what he wants to deliver as President of the United States of America.
No,
and I don't
argue with me. I agree that he should do that. I am agreeing. I am saying that he should not betray those principles. He should stand up for them.
Right,
they are not what the conservative base wants.
I think what is coming across, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you seem to be suggesting that if he were to clarify the situation, it would be to throw Mike Johnson under the bus. And I think he's been very clear about the fact that he does not want to do that. He benefits from ambiguity. He benefits from people presuming, he doesn't really like the underlying policies, that he's blessing Mike Johnson as pushing through right now.
Yes, he's always benefited from the perception that he is not part of the establishment despite being the president for 4 years.
Right. So the point is, if voters actually want someone who's accountable, they need to not look at Donald Trump with these rose-colored glasses and simply project onto him what they want of him instead of looking clearly at what he's representing he will do as president. We know based on what he did for 4 years as president, and we know based on what his priorities are in the moment, saying he'd prefer to align himself with the establishment if it means that he wins, even if it means almost $100 billion going out of the door to priorities to his base, that four priorities that his base doesn't support.
We want the same thing here. I want leadership in the Republican Party that has repeatedly betrayed the base on all of these issues to wake up, including Donald Trump. No, I'm not running cover for Donald Trump, including Donald Trump. These are bad policies. These are not what conservatives want. They should listen to the voices in the party that have cautioned that this isn't a good thing, or else what was even the point? I'm frankly seeing a lot of right-leaning commentators who are very supportive of replacing Kevin McCarthy saying, what was that effort even for? What was the point? When you rip the Mike Johnson mask off, if it's just Kevin McCarthy or some generic establishment Republican who's going to do all the same things, who's frankly going to do all the same things on these issues as Hakeem Jeffries would, what is the point? And that frustration is going to be felt by conservatives all over the country if this kind of thing continues.
All right, stick around. We've got a lot more Rising coming up next.